Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining the DataON Virtual Academy webinar. This is our May edition, actually our third one this year, and very excited to be here with all of you and share with you the latest technology in architecture for DataON and our partners. So the title of this webinar today is called Architect Hybrid Flash Azure Stack HCI Solutions for multi-workload environments. And we have a lot of great speakers here today to share their technology with you, along with our customer uh, um, from Pronet. A quick introduction, we have NVIDIA, Multi-Beck, Senior Director, Enterprise Market Development. Multi will give a preview and an update on the NVIDIA technology across the portfolio, especially focusing on the high performance networking, which is the foundation for an Azure Stack HCI solution. We also are happy to have Praveen Medha, from a director of segment marketing from Western Digital. Praveen will share the technology from Western Digital, especially the NVMe SSD roadmap and what Western Digital is bringing to the space. We'll close off with our customer, Andrew Hill, Andrew Hill from Pronet Solutions. Andrew will share his experience of deploying a Microsoft Azure Stack HCI solution running multiple workloads. So I'm very excited that you guys could hear a lot of great content today, and hopefully you guys could really come away with a lot of ideas. Feel free to ask questions through the entire webinar. We have a section for questions, and I'll be a moderator. If I see any questions, I'll make sure I bring it up to the presenters, and we'll try to answer them accordingly. All right, let's get started. Some housekeeping items. Please make sure you're all muted during the webinar, and we will have some Q&A time towards the end to make sure we can answer all the questions from the speakers. If you want to reach and engage with us, our partners and our presenter, these are some of the Twitter handles from NVIDIA, Western Digital, and Pronet. And feel free to also tag DataON if you have any question as well. So my name is Howard Lowe. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing from DataON. I've been working with customers like yourself for a long time, and I think the journey of hybrid cloud has been the key direction where DataON and Microsoft and our partner has been on for the last 10 years. And this journey continues with more innovation technology coming to the marketplace. Just a quick background on DataON. DataON is a US-based company here in Southern California. We've been around since 1987 for over 33 years. DataON have made a decision to be a exclusive Microsoft partner, meaning that the technology we architect along with our partners are all Microsoft-based technology. We continue to innovate with our software management tools. We continue to spend a lot of time to ensure that our technology are certified and validated with Microsoft Azure Stack HCI. And ultimate goal is to really develop and deliver a comprehensive on-premises and hybrid cloud solution for our customers. At DataON, our services and solution really focus on delivering this comprehensive turnkey experience that includes architect and deploying a hybrid converged infrastructure based on Microsoft Azure Stack HCI. Talk to our customer and understanding the challenge you face with business continuity, especially related to backup and DR, and how we can leverage Azure services as an option or other technology to help you have that business continuities. But at the same time, DataON continue to innovate to ensure that when customer deploy a hybrid cloud computing solution with Azure Stack HCI, you have the right set of tools and capability to manage and monitor your infrastructure, both from a Microsoft hybrid perspective from Windows Admin Center and also with our new software, DataON Must Pro. To do that, we're also a cloud service provider to ensure that we could deliver that cloud services experience with our customers. The last slide I have just to set it up is that as industry continue to innovate, Microsoft and our partners, NVIDIA, Western Digital, continue to drive this concept of hybrid cloud. And a hybrid cloud really talks about the fact that you have the ability to deliver on-premises service to run your enterprise workload and applications, running a Azure Stack HCI, running edge and robo infrastructure while still protecting your data from a data governance perspective. But it doesn't mean that just because you chose Microsoft, you cannot have the ability to manage everything across. Microsoft came out with the concept of Azure Arc, which is a great management interface platform, which allows you to monitor and manage all your infrastructure across your entire environment, whether or not it's in your data center, at the edge, or even legacy infrastructure, or even other cloud service provider. So that multi-cloud concept of Azure Arc really has been one of the key driver for a lot of our customers making that Microsoft choice. So love to dive that detail into that a little bit later, but this is a great direction from our customer and partners. Microsoft Azure Stack HCI is continue to be the driver in the marketplace. There's over 30,000 clusters enabled today, Azure Stack HCI. And just on DataON, we really have delivered this solution across a broad spectrum of our customer base. And this is just a snapshot of it, right? And these customers could range from state, local government. You could go from retail customer. K-12 is a great big market for a lot of us because they really want to take advantage of software-defined networking. Financial services is trusting their data with Microsoft Azure Stack HCI, hospitals, federal government, utility, you name it. So you can see that the application of Azure Stack HCI as an infrastructure really is proliferating across all the segment of the market. And people are running their SQL workloads, VDI workloads, file share workloads, many type of technology running on the Azure Stack HCI platform. And more is coming, like Kubernetes services, VDI services. All these are services from Azure that you'll see Microsoft continue to enable. So a customer like yourself who's building a hybrid cloud infrastructure, you can run all the Azure services on premises and leverage all the capability. So it's a really exciting time for all of us, especially now coming out of COVID. Hopefully everybody's healthy and safe to really have a great infrastructure to continue to grow your business. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Moti Beck from NVIDIA, who will talk more about networking. Here you go, Moti.
Thank you, Howard. Again, my name is Moti Beck, and I'm part of the NVIDIA networking business unit that used to be, at the time, Mellanox. And I'm working mostly with the technology partners like Microsoft on solutions, hybrid cloud solutions, on-prem deployments. So HCI is one of the most important solutions that we have, and we are partnering with DataON on providing, of course, the most efficient, as you'll see, and best networking for this kind of a solution. But before starting, I would like always to start with an overview of why HCI is so much efficient compared to other architectures in the market today. And I'll do it short because probably I used it in the past and you might see it, but in a way on the left side, you see here the legacy deployments that actually still in use and still alive and will continue to be there for a while because there is so huge deployment of it. But the drawbacks on this one is that it's pretty expensive and pretty complicated to manage because you have different networking, mostly Ethernet for the compute side, and you have different for the storage, a fiber channel, and then you have all those complexity of managing the transition of data or communication of data between the two of them through different networking. So it's still there, but it's a little bit declining with the time. When they're moving to the converged solution that is using only Ethernet, because the Ethernet is the most popular and mostly used on the cloud today, that is very, of course, sensitive to the cost and wants the highest performance to support as many vendors as they can over one server or on the cluster itself. This particular case, you have the compute running on its own servers, the storage on its own server, but still both of them are running and communicating, in this particular case, the SMB direct that I'll mention later on, for the storage services. So this is very similar from the performance, from the architecture point of view to the legacy one, because there is a dedicated to the storage and a dedicated to the compute. But here you have only one Ethernet that can run today up to 200 gig per second, while the fiber channels is much less. But then for smaller deployment, for on-prem deployment, you have the hyper-converged that both are running, the compute and the storage are running on the same servers. And then the network, there is a software-defined utility. This is S2D that is being used, storage spaces direct, that is being used in Windows. But it puts a very heavy load on the network itself, because now the network needs to do both the compute, the storage, management, and all the other services that there are much more networking on the other solution to provide it. This is why you want to have actually to take a very deep look when you are building it as such a solution, or when you are buying such a solution. What is the network that is being used? And this is what we've been doing with DataON for a while. So I don't know why it's not moving. Maybe you can move the slide for me. Yeah. So one of the things that important is to analyze the performance of the network, and there are a couple of aspects. One of them is the bandwidth itself. The bandwidth itself, as I mentioned before, it can be up to 200 gig per second. But the other element is the offloading capabilities of the technology. And here where RDMA come into the play, RDMA is remote direct memory access, that actually offload the protocol, the networking protocol, from running over the CPU, like the TCP/IP needs, to the NICs themselves. So if we take a look on the left side, there is the TCP/IP stack. There are multiple copies. The CPU is involved. The operating system is involved, and every time that the operating system is involved, the jitter is much bigger, because the operating system may be busy with another task, and until it can serve. And then it works, but then the latency and the performance is much less compared to what can be done on the RDMA, that the CPU tells the NIC or the RDMA NIC, you know, I want you to move a packet from this server, from this specific location in the memory to the other, and everything is being done offloaded without the CPU, without the operating system. And when it's done, the NIC are notifying the CPU, hey, we are done, and the overall performance is much better. So this is the RDMA technologies that NVIDIA, or Mellanox at the time, was the pioneering company. And we, I believe, have the best solution today. There are many that provide it, but we are the only ones that does it 100% in the hardware. And when you are choosing the component, and this is what we have been doing with DataON, it's not, you need to verify that all the components are giving you the best possible performance. Because if you choose just one component, for example, in this particular case, we are showing what we did on the NIC and the switch from the NVIDIA networking business, you can get the highest performance. If you are going to get a good NIC and a bad switch, or low latency or high latency switch, the performance is not going to be as good. And this is a benchmark that was done at the time. It's a pretty old benchmark. I can tell you that it was done at the time that Microsoft announced the SMB Direct. It was first with Windows Server 2012, and it's still valid. And this is a great solution that shows actually the double performance that RDMA or RDMA over Ethernet enables compared to TCP/IP. there is still the, on the slides, there is still the blog and actually a video. So I would encourage you guys to take a look, because it's still valid, it's still the same RDMA technology, and shows the performance that eventually after that storage spaces direct, or the software-defined storage from Microsoft was using to get the highest performance. So we are today, I think, the leading from the NIC point of view. The NVIDIA is today 65% of the NICs that are 25 gig and above. The latest one that we have is the ConnectX-6 LX and DX, depends what you want to use, up to 200 gig, as I said, from 10 to 200 gig per second. But as you can see, the bandwidth itself is just one parameter of everything that we are providing. The most important is all the offload capabilities that we have. For example, if you want to run security, you can run it on IPsec offloading. It's a stateless operation, so why not to do it? Virtualization, we have a lot of technologies under the ASAP Square technologies that accelerate the vSwitch. When you have so many VMs running on the same server and you are moving the packets from one VM to the other, the vSwitch performance is pretty important. It can be actually a bottleneck if you are doing it in hardware, in software. And of course, the Rockies that I mentioned, and recently we added timestamp protocol, or being done in hardware, because we started to see more and more applications that are sensitive to the timing, to the precise timing, and then doing it in software is not going to give you the lower possible jitter and performance. And we are the same on the switch. Not all the switches are born the same. At NVIDIA, we did a lot. We came from the HPC market size, and market segment. We did a lot to reduce the latency, reduce the overall jitter that can be when you are not using the right components. We don't have time today to go over them, but for example, our latency is, the in-networking latency is pretty fixed, as you can see. It's not depends on the packet size compared to the other. Our buffer management is much better compared to the other. We have all the buffer is spread equally between all the ports compared to the other switches that, only half of that is managed. So if you have two ports that are on the same busy buffer, the performance is overall much lower compared to what we have. And there are other parameters just to make you aware that, you need to choose the right components, and that actually DataON is using. Another technologies that we actually have in production, or a solution I would call it, we call it zero-touch Rocky. At the time, we got a lot of, I would say, complaints a little bit about the need to configure the switch to be a lossless switch using all the priority flow control or the ECN. So you can still use it, but we have a solution that you don't need to do anything. Yeah, it's basically the same as running TCP/IP. You are still getting a little bit of less performance, as you can see, and there are a couple of benchmarks or measurements that we did. But overall, if you don't want to use or to configure it, you can still do it with the zero-touch Rocky, just for you guys to be aware of it. But of course, DataON is fully aware of it and will give you the best solutions that you need. So again, overall, take a look on the end-to-end solution. Don't just buy one component like the best NIC, and from the other, the switch. We have the switch, our Spectrum switches are providing much less latency and higher performance, and the ConnectX family, of course, has the RDMA technology and ZTR, zero-touch Rockies that I mentioned before, offloading on NVMe. So there are so much that we have that if you need, and I'll be happy to go after that and to discuss it in details. And with this one, I would like to introduce Praveen, that will tell you about Western Digital.
Thanks, Modi. I hope everybody can hear me. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Praveen Medha, and I lead segment marketing for Flash Solutions in the data center. I'm going to see if I can move my slides on my own. All right. So before I jump into the deck, I'll just briefly highlight what the three sections are that I want to focus on today. The first few slides are really a quick introduction to the company. Then the second section, which is really one slide, talks about Microsoft Azure HCI and what are some of the use cases and the implications of those use cases on the underlying storage requirements. And then the third section is, of course, introducing you to the portfolio of Western Digital Flash products that address these use cases. So in case some of you are not familiar, WD offers an expansive portfolio of technologies, storage devices, systems and solutions for the data center and the consumer space. Our data-centric solutions are really comprised of Western Digital, WD brand, the GeForce brand, G Technology brand, and then the SanDisk brand. So, we have a broad portfolio across client, consumer, and data center solutions with many industry firsts, all the way from raw NAND to consumer devices to ASICs for NVMe, NVMe over Fabric, and of course HDDs and SSDs that both go into the client space, like desktops, notebooks, automotive, gaming, to data center, both in the hyperscalers as well as storage OEMs, and as well as solutions that address fabric attached storage, as well as solutions for the home and on-the-go market. So it's a pretty extensive portfolio of products, and we will be focused in our discussion today on the data center market and solutions that we bring to that space. So again, I think it's important to reinforce that our data-centric solutions are really built on innovation from silicon to systems. We have the broadest portfolio of solutions across SSDs, HDDs, as well as platforms. And I think you'll see a significant amount of industry firsts, some of which are highlighted here in the middle box. But like I said, we are focused in today's session on our trusted leadership and the enterprise data center market, where we bring one of the most comprehensive storage portfolios for mission-critical workloads, both in hyperscaler and storage OEMs for tier 0 workloads in across databases, OLTP, OLAP, analytics. So I think the solutions are there. I think we definitely want to key in on some of the HCI use cases and where WD products will help you achieve your objectives. By the way, we'll be looking forward to taking your questions along the way if you have any. So if you really look under the hood on the left in the picture that I've highlighted, there are really three components for Microsoft Azure Stack HCI, right? Hyperconverged infrastructure. One is SDC, or software-defined compute. The middle one is the software-defined storage, or SDS, and the right third box is software-defined networking, or SDN. Hyper-V addresses the software-defined compute part. Moti has already covered the software-defined networking component, and my focus is on the middle box, which is the software-defined storage, which is also called Storage Spaces Direct, or S2D in Microsoft lingo. And on the bottom right in that picture, I've highlighted some of our products that we are working actively with DataON to bring to market as fully qualified solutions. So if you shift your attention to the right side of the slide, there are really 5 use cases from a hybrid cloud perspective. The first one is, of course, remote office, branch office. And here the focus is really on retail or on the edge, where the customer is expecting high availability and storage resiliency at an affordable price. So you could be looking at a typical 2-node configuration footprint with a low compute and storage requirement. And that's why I am making a note at the end of what the storage attributes are for this use case. The second use case is VDI, or the virtual desktop. And here, you're talking about having the option of either doing a remote, a Windows remote desktop, or VMware Horizon, or a Citrix virtual app on desktop applications. Now here the focus from a performance and scale is really, as you add more users, you want to be able to quickly scale, because it's all about how they're experiencing the desktop, because you're actually doing all of the crunching on the cluster, and then you're just really bringing the images to the screen. So the focus here is on performance, and from a storage attributes perspective, you need some level of caching, and of course you need capacity as you take on more and more storage intensive workloads. In the middle, number 3 is high performance Microsoft SQL Server. Again, as the name title itself suggests, the focus is on performance. You do have the option of deploying either a Microsoft Windows SQL or a Linux SQL. But again, the focus is really being able to deliver an SQL performance which is optimized for performance again. So you need capacity, but you also need some level of caching as a tier in front of it, that you can quickly offer these kinds of performance metrics. Number 4 on this list is trusted enterprise virtualization. So again, I think if you really take a look back, one of the reasons why you are deciding for an on-prem solution is because of data governance, or because of lower latency. So if you're looking at a more trusted environment because it's more secure, it's on-prem, then you can definitely look into this use case where you're able to secure your infrastructure. And then this is really virtualization-based security with a trusted platform module, where you actually have a chip on the server, or on each server in the cluster, where you're able to deliver that root of trust. And you're really making sure that all of the components on the server are able to have that handshake around root of trust, and our WD drives offer that capability. And again, the attributes here are around cache and capacity. And then last but not least, as you're modernizing your workloads, and you're consolidating your virtualized machines, or you're looking into container services, by getting the efficiencies that you get in the cloud to the on-prem experience, you are looking at a Kubernetes service, and be able to then repurpose existing or build native workloads that are container based. You're looking at more secure, more easily provisionable deployments, And then again, the focus is really on high performance storage, in this case, with some level of connector storage, so that you can actually make these instances persistent as you move them around your cluster. So all in all, I think if there are a few takeaways from this slide, it's that storage plays a key role in your different use cases. And you have to pay attention to what are your needs from a workload perspective. Is it cache? Is it IOPS? Is it bandwidth? Is it both? Is it capacity? And then be able to then engage with us on the right uh, 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 devices that can meet those business needs. All right. So let's talk about what's going on in the data center and what kind of solutions we are bringing to the market. So if you look on the far right, not far right, but on the second on the right side of your slide, I think the key message there is that NVMe is growing at a significant clip in the data center. It's almost doubling every 2 years, as you can see, more than doubling. And then, SATA for sure is in secular decline. And next year, so for 2021, SATA is still dominating, but starting next year, NVMe will take over from SATA. SAS is showing some signs of life. It is actually grown in the last year or two, single digit, primarily on the on the tail of hyperscalers and HCI. But longer term, we know that it's going to flatline or start declining, because you're reaching the last legs in terms of speeds. There's a refresh, 24 gig refresh coming next year, and I believe there's a 45 gig also being looked at down the line, but it's really starting to cap out. And then, of course, NVMe will continue its march as PCIe iterations go from PCI Gen 3 to Gen 4 to Gen 5. You're doubling your speeds, and then NVMe is able to then ride on top of that speed curve. So, and on the left side, I have two products that I'm showcasing for this presentation. We have many more, but I think for this presentation, we are really focusing on our data center SKUs for performance and mainstream. The target replacements are for SAS, which is usually a dual port performance. And then on the mainstream, it's a single port software-defined storage SATA replacement. We'll talk a little bit more about what the different characteristics are. But in terms of workloads, I think I'm not going to go through each of the rows in this table, but just picking up a few highlights. From an applications perspective, if you're really looking for tier 0 mission critical workloads, AI/ML, financials, you're looking at performance play. And if you're looking at your typical mixed workloads, which are random read or random write, but middle of the road, then you can look at the mainstream device. So in terms of capacities, we go all the way up from 1.92 to 15.36 in a U.2 form factor on the performance. On the mainstream, we have a U.2 as well as an E1.L form factor, which takes us all the way to 15 terabytes. We have different levels of endurance. There is data encryption, which is an absolute requirement for data center. We have TCG Ruby. We also have atomic writes with Malibu, which is our performance product. And then we offer up to 128 namespaces. The reason why we are successful in this space is because we are vertically integrated. We have our in-house controller. We have our own NAND, so we are able to stay on the curve, both in terms of innovation at the silicon level as well as at the memory level. And then we are able to, based on different workloads, we're able to define and drive different trim settings so that we can meet different endurance and different performance metrics, both across low and high mixed and sequential versus random workloads. And then we have a few slides that go into a little bit more detail. So one way to really identify which device is really look at what your needs are. If you have a high bandwidth and a high random IOPS, you want to look at the far right, which is our UltraStar DC7 SN840. This is really more of a storage caching, both in scale up and scale out workloads. Really for mission critical, tier 0 workloads, like I said, for databases, OLAP, OLTP, AI/ML kind of workloads. In the middle is really, I've put mixed random workloads, again, for storage servers, HCI, which this webinar is focused on. And then, of course, next-gen apps, especially as you look to containerize your workloads. And on the far left, is our SN640, which is for read-intensive workloads, as well as potentially looking at edge, as well as object storage, content caching workloads. So you can have a mix of the two. One could be in a tiering, and one could be in a capacity tier, or one can serve both capacity and caching tier. It really depends on what level of demand you have from an IOPS and a throughput perspective from your workload. I have two slides, one for each product, a little bit more deeper dive in terms of the form factors, in terms of key features. Both of these are Gen 3 products. Our Gen 4 products are on the roadmap, and they'll be announced shortly. But these, like I said, they are from a capacity and performance perspective. We think they serve the market just fine today. PCI Gen 4 adoption is really expected next year, and we have our products lined up as that adoption picks up. But again, most important takeaways are we have an in-house controller, we have in-house memory for the NAND, firmware, investments, testing, and production. So this is our mainstream product, and this is our performance product, which is also a U.2. Again, it's a Gen 3 part, and it has all the enterprise data center features like namespaces, scatter gather, the management interfaces, atomic writes, so you avoid double buffering, especially for databases, critical need. And then highly reliable with power loss data protection, zoring across dies, and end-to-end data path protection. We also have TCG, Ruby, secure arrays, instant secure arrays, firmware updates without reset. So all the data center capabilities that you would be expecting for running your tier 0 mission critical workloads. With that, I'm going to pass the baton to Andrew. Andrew, please take it away.
Thank you, Praveen, and thank you, Howard, for having me here today. So I am Andrew Hill, one of the co-founders around 20 years ago at Pronet Solutions. We're a customer of DataON Storage, and Howard invited me here today, I think, just to tell you a little bit about our story, one of our recent challenges, and really just the solution that we've had with Azure Stack HCI to address that. So first, let me just give you a little context, I guess, by telling you some about Pronet. We're an MSP cloud service provider with clients that are primarily in the oil and gas and financial service industries here in Houston and the greater Texas area. We have designed private cloud solutions and provided private cloud hosting for more than 15 years, back before it was called cloud or private cloud, even, I think, back in the days when it was just called servers and data centers. But most of our clients have the traditional standard requirements that you'd expect from an oil and gas or financial services industries company with virtual machines that are running email or VDI or remote desktop and other database servers, file servers, web servers, all of those type of things. So we provided solutions for these just through all of the technologies that have been available over the last 15, 16 years, ones that you're familiar with, probably VMware back in the early days, and then every version of Hyper-V since then. So all of these solutions have always been hypervisors running over either direct attached storage or some type of SAN, and that has had various types and costs, but for the most part, it's been reliable enough over the years, if not pretty expensive. So the challenge that came for us recently, probably 3 or 4 years ago, when we had an existing client that began developing a new web-based application that was a little bit different than some of the other web applications we've hosted before with just regular web front ends and databases and some storage. This one had a particular set of needs where it, that came out of its design, where it provides a place for batch uploads of document images that are then processed through OCR and stored and provided for end users to access all around the world. And part of what was challenging with this is that the client had no real way to gauge their growth, their data footprint growth. So it started off with a few terabytes, but quickly went to a couple, 20 terabytes, and then we could tell it was going to be growing quickly, but without really any way to model that from the client. So this is really outside of our traditional model, where we would go until we filled up a SAN or some other storage, attached storage, and then have to buy more in the form of just another incremental SAN or incremental storage device. And so that was going to be harder for us to provide storage as a service to a client that's billed monthly based on their usage. So this is why we were pretty excited back when Storage Spaces Direct was first announced back with Server 2016. We saw it as a way to become more flexible in how we grew our data storage as our client data footprint would expand unpredictably. So we were very early adopters of this technology and built it out using white labeled server systems and spending hours in the Windows Server catalog looking for certified hardware components. And after spending probably more money than I would like to think about and going through several cycles of Windows updates that would cause massive headaches with Storage Spaces Direct, and usually end up with us having to engage Microsoft support and work for months on in some cases just to work through those, we realized that the complexity to provide an end-to-end Storage Spaces Direct solution was really more than we were wanting to handle. So it was at this point in time, I think, that we saw that Azure Stack HCI was on the horizon. And rather than be an early adopter and continue the cycle of frustration that we'd had over years, we decided to make the call and search out a partner like DataON who could put together a validated solution and make it work and keep it current for us. So we'd seen DataON's name for years, I guess, through our interaction with Microsoft events. And so I reached out to Howard and probably about a little over a year ago, and we began the process to design a system that would be able to handle both our everyday workload and this unique customer's web application, all in one scalable cluster that we could grow without large incremental cost down the road. So after a few weeks of discussion, Howard and his team helped us come up with a hybrid flash design that can handle both high IOPS disk performance, part of our workload needs, and the ability to scale up our total storage capacity for a relatively low incremental cost. So let me show you on this slide a little bit of what that solution looks like. We came up with the initial deployment was a 4-node DataON 4 compute node cluster, which had 2 JBOD attached that had been split up into zones so that each compute cluster could have a dedicated JBOD zone attached to it. And the JBODs have 14 terabyte Western Digital disk in it for low-cost volume storage that we can expand out. And then each of the compute nodes have 2 layers of flash storage, both 14 terabyte and 3.2 terabyte drives, so they could be divided into 2 layers. One tier that is made of specifically designed high-capacity 14 terabyte QLC flash drives, which we use for high-performance capacity storage. And then 1 layer consisting of the 3.2 terabyte NVMe flash for our volume caching. And so, see if I can go to the next slide and show you in storage spaces what that looks like. We're able to then take that array of disks and configure 2 separate storage tiers. One that uses the high capacity flash drives for persistent storage, with the smaller high durability flash drives still used as a cache layer. And then a second tier that also uses flashes for a cache layer, but the high capacity and cheaper spinning disks for capacity storage. So then inside of storage spaces, we're able to assign different virtual disks to our storage tiers and meet the specific needs that we have for each VM or application that we're hosting. So the results have been really great. With the storage split up into 4 virtual disks and assigned to these different tiers, we've been able to get per volume IO of over between 1 to 2 million IOPS combined between all the volumes on for example, like a 4K random read test, and then on some of our sustained write throughput of over 25 gigabytes per second in different sequential write tests. So in summary, I would just say that we have finally gotten the performance we were looking for from Azure Stack HCI and found the reliability and the ease of management that we were looking for by using a partner like DataON, who got us past all of the compatibility issues that we had with our DIY white box solution. So with that, I would like to say thanks to Howard for that. Thanks to the DataON storage team for getting us there. And I would like to turn it back over to him.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm going to pause there before I start the conversation. I think there's several good points that was brought up by our partners, and I'll start with Andrew. Andrew, it's never that easy. I tell the customers, you have to manage your infrastructure. You got to know your technology. You know, if you have to give some advice to your peers, other admins, other MSP, other enterprise admins, what are some of the tips you will give as they look at a Microsoft Azure Stack HCI solution?
So aside from having a good partner, I think that was the biggest failure on our part for several years, was to underestimate the complexity of putting together the end-to-end solution. So we had good components. We had Mellanox, or back then Mellanox, now NVIDIA switches and switching, and we had all parts that came out of the Windows Server catalog. So we weren't using off-brand everything, but and we could get it up, we could get it running, but it's not a static organism, right? It's something that as Windows updates come out and as technology progresses, we found ourselves back to struggling with troubleshooting on it, even when we engaged with Microsoft. It was just because it was it was just a system that had not been built and validated end to end. And so I think there's a real advantage. So for the customer, and so we had a lot of frustration during those years. And so for people who are trying to work with storage spaces direct or with Azure Stack HCI, a lot of times you see frustration vented on these forums and places saying that it's a bad product or a bad solution. But I think what happens is it's a solution that's open to anyone building it out and running with it, that it creates a lot of scenarios where we back ourselves into a corner as MSPs or as kind of service providers who are trying to build out something that doesn't have all of the research and development and engineering time put into it that a company like DataON provides for us. So
yeah, that's great. I think that's a good little divvy into NVIDIA networking multi, is that you guys have got a lot of grief in the beginning for Rocky V2, setting up PFCs, all that, and you guys continue to innovate and listen to the customer to get the switch, the lossless Ethernet technology. And why did you guys do that? You guys have great performance technology solution, but so what does that do to help the customer?
So the customer, as Andrew said, in this particular case, Andrew is the customer, wants to have an easy managed solution, reliable, high performance, and Mellanox, and I use Mellanox because this is when we developed the RDMA technology, always was an HPC player. But the HPC itself, all of us know that ease of use and management is not the most important aspect. But on the enterprise and the cloud, those are the most important. So we actually had to adjust ourselves from higher performance only to more ease of use, reliability, management, because you guys or Andrew guys are running mission critical workloads, and it needs to be easy to manage and reliable. So this is why we started, but we started at the beginning with the priority flow control because this was the available and ECN. But then based on actually the complaints of customers, we came with the zero-touch Rocky solution. That happened to be a very huge success because you are getting about 5% less performance, but it still gives you the reliability and the ease of use without need to worry about the switch itself.
Thank you, and also, to Praveen, you saw the architecture that we have designed for Andrew, and clearly the message on WD of being a vertical integrated company is very important to us because, you guys have the entire stack from top to bottom, from NVMe, SSD to the drives. And if people doesn't know that entire JBOD that we designed into the solution is actually manufactured by WD as well, because many of our customers require a lot of storage, right? And they want to grow and they can just have some. Can you tell more about why do you believe that's a great position advantage for Western Digital? I think you're muted.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Yeah, I think our claim to fame is really innovation all the way from silicon to the system, right? So we really understand not only at the silicon level, we have an in-house controller for our NVMe drives as well as for our HDD drives, but we also own the NAND that goes into the SSDs, as well as we are vertically integrated on the HDD side as well. And then like we showed in one of the slides and you referred to, right, we have our enclosures. So we have system levels for JBOD, JBOFs. So we can really understand, what are some of the architectural limitations and opportunities where we can really shine in terms of bringing a better solution from an SSD perspective, from an HDD perspective, and from a JBOD or a JBOF storage enclosure perspective. So we have the entire perspective. And we are also innovating at the software level. It's not just a device play, right? So to Moti's point about management, we have a significant play on the performance management, system level services, as well as the architecture to bring SSDs and HDDs and enclosures at the highest performing level, be it for a capacity need, for a high performance need, or somewhere in the middle.
Without getting you into trouble, Praveen, can you peek in the future in the next 12 months, and can you share something exciting that our customer may be anticipating that WD is going to maybe do, and that could get them excited?
Well, I think I already kind of alluded to that, which is that PCI Gen 4 is something that a lot of people are now finally getting excited about now that Ice Lake has been announced. We think it's going to get really adopted in the next 12 to 18 months, and we definitely see ourselves participating in that market. And then, of course, like I said, we own our NAND vertically, so we are looking at the next generation, the next NAND nodes, without going into too much of a roadmap. But we are at BiCS4, we are looking at BiCS5, then BiCS6, and then BiCS7, BiCS8. So we have a very extensive investment, millions and millions of hundreds of millions of dollars in terms of the capex that goes into our NAND roadmap. And then, of course, we are looking at what we can do from a systems perspective, like keeping up with the PCI generation, looking at capacity, looking at performance, and addressing our NAND solutions and HDD solutions to meet those needs.
Thank you. Same thing to you, Modi. Some kind of good candy for our customer to digest. Any good?
Yeah. So yes, people, the customers and user needs to assume that pretty soon you guys are going to run machine learning workloads. Machine learning is everywhere. This is the next revolution in the industry. And for the machine learning, you'll need a GPU. And this, of course, this is where NVIDIA is. NVIDIA is from the beginning the GPU company, and GPU is needed for the machine learning. By the way, machine learning requires so much data that we are using the term that you need to feed the beast. So this is where the Gen 4, and we have, by the way, already NICs that are Gen 4, and we support, as I mentioned, 200 and 400 gig per second are going to be over PCI Express Gen 5. So, Parveen, you need to plan for it.
We have plans. I'm just not talking to it. Yeah.
But coming back to the machine learning itself, again, first of all, it's a new area. Second, it's very complicated. So I would encourage you guys to take a look what NVIDIA is. We have all kind of application frameworks. Let's call it design kits that you can start with the training. It's an open environment. You can add later on your own training and the inference as well. And we have a per specific market segment. If you want to do speech recognition, we have Jarvis. If you want to do digital C2, we have Metropolis, and there are tens of them. So take a look. Everything is ready with many containers that are available. So this is probably going to be the next, and we already started to work with DataON on including those capabilities, including the GPU, into the new products or the next generation products.
So Andrew, you're the key customer here as a rep. I think there's a lot of exciting product and technology coming to the marketplace, and DataON will continue to innovate. I think one thing that Moti alluded to, and may be helpful to you, is ability to do GPUs and supporting Azure Stack HCI. I think that's definitely in the future for Microsoft. Any last words for our technologists here, that what you want, your ask, and your advice to the audience?
Well, we're definitely seeing that as the next phase, and what we are focusing on is VDI with GPU, and also GPU just for some of the case that I mentioned. Our client is doing a lot of OCR and has really already been pushing for enhancing that experience on their end. So that is top of our list of what we're wanting and ready to see get better, faster, cheaper, right? So
thank you, everybody. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Praveen. Thank you, Moti, for supporting this webinar. It's been great discussing the technology content. I think our audience and customer will really appreciate your insights and get excited about the future. And you guys touch upon many topics, and looking forward to working with all of you continuously, supporting you, Andrew, to make sure I give you more technology from our partners. Thank you very much, and I appreciate it. And have a healthy, continued post-COVID experience, and stay safe, and have a great weekend.
Thanks, Howard.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.